what do you want people to know?
Kind of that I miss him.
Overnight, George Floyd's 6-year-old daughter, Gianna, talking about her dad.
What was your dad like?
He played with me.
She didn't have to play with nobody else because Daddy was going to play with her all day long.
Gianna's mother, Roxy Washington, saying that George loved his daughter. He was always a great dad.
I mean, that was his baby. He loved his little girl.
Roxy found out about George's death when she got a phone call. She then got on the internet and saw the video.
I watched it only for a moment because I was like, I couldn't believe that somebody was doing him like that. I wish I could have been there to help him.
How did you explain what happened to your daughter?
I didn't.
But Gianna knew something was wrong.
She said, I hear them. I hear them saying my daddy's name. And I told her, she doesn't know what happened. I told her that her dad died because he couldn't breathe.
As for little Gianna, she may not know exactly what happened to her father, but she does know that everyone is talking about her dad.
That changed the world.
At just 6 years old, all she has left of her dad are memories. This baby book, part of the documentation of her father's love. Daddy stayed every night.
I know what I want to be when I grow up.
What?
I want to be a doctor. I want to take care of people.
Her mother, devastated. George will never get to see her chase those dreams.
My heart is broke for my baby. It's broke.
But we're here tonight to encourage and empower each other, our communities. Since we've been watching the news fastidiously all week, we've seen the news even change, and some things are happening favorably, and so we can only hope and pray that they continue to happen that way. We have a full plate tonight, jam-packed, super excited, all these educators on the line, students who are on the line. I do want to give a shout out to every student who is graduating this weekend. I have gotten text messages and emails of students who wanted to be here tonight, and parents who wanted to be here tonight, educators even who have virtual graduations. And I know every state is different, every city is different. There are still some schools who are in session, some schools who've been out as early as May. And so I just want to congratulate all of you graduates, some of you who may be on the call, whether that be high school or college. That is a phenomenal feat and one that shouldn't be taken lightly. The second half of today's webinar, we will speak with students, some college and some high school, about how all of this recent events has impacted their world, shaken it up, stirred it, and how they and their friends are coping. Any educators in the room know that once a student hits 13 or 14, the strongest influence is their peers. And so we wonder, how are students and their peers, what are they discussing? What are they talking about? What are they hopeful for? What are they despondent about? And for all you parents out there who want your children to tell you how their day was, when they get past 14, they may not talk about their day as openly. And so I think it's great tonight. We've got some students who do want to talk openly about just their lives and what they've been facing these last few months. So let me go ahead and just kind of get these housekeeping things, as I always do, out of the way. Those who are joining us for the first time tonight, today is day 5. Grateful to have you. I Can't Breathe series. Some of you have been here since day 1. I just appreciate you pressing out each and every evening at 8 o'clock. I've been doing my best, I promise you, not to keep you past 9, but these last couple of nights have been amazing. We had some spiritual leaders who were on the call last night, and I felt like I was in church. And we had some attorneys and judges join us on Wednesday, and or on Thursday, and that was great. We had some law enforcement come this week. That was great. So each night has been getting better and better and the time that we remain on the call has just been a little longer. So I promise not to hold you too late. I did say give me 45 minutes with the educators and give me 45 minutes with the students. It's Friday. So, you know, for you adults in the room, grab your glass of wine or your favorite beer. You know, to you students in the room, nothing wrong with Kool-Aid. I grew up on Kool-Aid, nothing wrong with it. So tonight we've got, for our educators for the first 40 minutes, I do want to introduce them to you. Dr. Todd Mealy, he's a teacher and professor in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Todd, I'm not sure what screen you're in yet, but you can just wave your hand so everybody can see if your video is on. Dr. Mealy has a book that is dropping in November. This is not his first, second, or third book. Todd, I think this might be number 5 or number 6. You can tell us when you get on the call. But this book he has dropping in November is available for pre-order. It's entitled Race Conscious Pedagogy.
Heather Jones.
Disrupting
Join the meeting
at majority white schools. So Todd, it's great to have you. My good friend Jacqueline Beto is on the call tonight. She's a PhD student at Seton Hall in New Jersey. She's also the CEO of Elevate Newark. Jackie, I don't envy you in that PhD seat. Been there, done that. I won't do it again. I'm just glad I made it through. Good to have you. Chelsea Rosen, who's a teacher in Anne Arundel, Maryland, but lives in Baltimore, Maryland. It's great to have you on the call tonight as well. Dr. Kim Morton, who is the Director of Student Support Services at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. She's also the chair of Black Faculty Staff Cabinet at the institution. And my good friend and brother, Biko Kajifi, who is a teacher in Montgomery County, Maryland. And so those are our educators tonight. Let me make sure that we got all of y'all on the top screen. All right, educators, y'all ready? I see y'all taking a deep breath. I ain't gonna bite your head off like I did with the maternities. I was getting into the maternities. I'm gonna take it a little easy on y'all tonight just because I'm an educator, lifelong educator. Father was an educator, and so education is just in our family. The first question I'd like to ask, and the panelists, you guys can take your mics off, keep your videos on, please. We have been here before. Here is we've experienced issues with race for lots of years. Why is this different? Why is this moment? It feels different to me. And so I'm going to put it out there and say it is different. Today, June 5th, 2020, all of the things that have been going on. And so Dr. Mealy, I'd like to start this question with you, and we'll have some others put in. But talk to us a little bit about why this feels since we've been here before.
Dr. Riley, thanks for having me. I'm privileged to be here with everybody else, all the other educators in the room. You know, this is an issue that's been bubbling for generations. You know, as people have questioned why we've had protests.
Join the meeting.
All 50 states, and why some of those protests have turned into looting. It's really important for folks to ask themselves, has anyone really been paying attention to the countless protests that have happened in the past? And no matter what the case is, protests in history or today, it's always been the same thing, and that's the fact that white supremacy has really reigned in. It has never been reigned in. It's reigned supreme. And the only time there seems to be any progress, Jason, is when those people in positions of power decide that they're going to change the status quo because it benefits them. You know, the late scholar, you know him, Derek Bell, calls it interest convergence. So you take a look in history, you asked me to speak about history a little bit, you got the 15th Amendment. Well, that was given, you know, to give black men the right to vote as a way to boost the political power of Republicans in the South, where the Democratic Party kept winning state elections. Or school desegregation in 1954 with the Brown decision. You know, that what did that do? That eradicated black schools and placed control of education into the hands of white educators. And even with the election of Barack Obama, you know, many voters didn't necessarily like him, but they saw that they would get the policy they wanted if they voted for him. So those are short-lived victories that seem to come by decision makers that are going to benefit from those things. So that means that at the root of all of this is that ubiquitous term institutional racism. And Dr. Ali, 82% of our history has seen institutionalized oppression, slavery, Jim Crow, residential segregation, genocide of indigenous folks, land removal, forced assimilation, media representations. We can go on. But collectively, that's institutional oppression. You know, and as it pertains to law enforcement and the over-policing of Black and brown communities, you know, police, 3 folks a day died at the hands of law enforcement in 2019. That amounts to over 1,000 deaths under the supervision of law enforcement. You know, 25% of those who were killed by law enforcement were African American, despite the fact that that's just 13% of the American population. And 99% of law enforcement officers are never prosecuted. And this does tie to lynching culture in our history as well. 5,000 lynchings in our history, 73% of those lynchings occurred to African American, namely men. And those whites who were lynched they were lynched because they were allied to African American folks or they were Jews. You know, so you can pick out a number, say, I'm not sure what the number was, the total number was is so far in 2020, but let's say the number is 16. You know, a death impacts more than 16 people. It impacts 16 families and 16 communities. So as long as that number is not 0, this is a problem. And that's why people are on the streets for 11 consecutive days now trying to explain this, because, and I'm gonna wrap up here in a minute, but all the protests that have, speaking on valuing Black lives in the course of American history, have fallen on deaf ears. Pick out a year, 1960, 61, people in lunch counters, people in buses, people marching in the streets. You know, all of that was the wrong way to protest. You know, people taking a knee, if you want to jump ahead in history, that was the wrong way to go about protests. So people of color in particular, they're frustrated, they're exhausted. You know, with so many white folks, especially those that are in positions of power, that they've done nothing. But what makes this different is that, unfortunately, 5 sickening events we've heard about within a short window of time. You know, the coronavirus and the disparities with that, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, you know, what happened in New York, George Floyd. You know, so I think all that happening at one time has really been an anvil to white folks across the country that have been blinded for so long.
Thanks for that history. That was super dope. Jackie, chime in, please. We've been here before, Jackie. Why are we still here?
So why are we still here? Well, we haven't done what we needed to do for the last, what I would say, 400 years, because why is this different? It's the tipping point. It was everyone's tipping point. The overflow and the tipping point happens when enough is enough. And so now when I think about what's going on currently, it's across the board. It impacts everyone in every facet. I'm a mother, slain fathers, daughters, mothers wondering, how does a person have a recording of their son calling out their name right before they take their last breath? There is no articulation for an experience like that. So when you see the outcry, is because everyone is being impacted by this pain. Even though historically, we should have felt the outcry 400 years ago. Because when people say it's being filmed, it's been visually depicted for a very long time, down to how slaves were brought into this country. So it is the desensitization of this impact on African American people. It can't be the new normal. It can't be normal. It's not okay. It's not correct. It's not moral. It is injustice at its foundation. And now we are here, and now it is an uproar because we have had enough. And that's we, collective we. Me, I'm Dominican and Puerto Rican, born and raised in Newark, New Jersey, mother to African American children. The we is collective we in my house. So I will finish with this statement. My daughter called me at 10:33 last night and said, I wasn't okay today. And I said, what's wrong? She said, did you see what's going on? And in my house, we don't indoctrinate fear. I make my children aware of what is happening. And then I pointed her back to her gifts. And I said, you know, there's a picture that has a little young man that says, am I next? Your picture will say, I won't be next.
Mm.
That's all. Thank you.
No, that was great. The message, I won't be next, it takes me to this next thought, Biko, and then Chelsea. I'd like you both to talk about, as high school teachers, Biko, you're in high school, Chelsea, you're in. Talk to me, Biko, about what are you doing in your classrooms that might be different. Maybe it's not different for you, Biko. Maybe you've been doing this all along.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Doc. You know, I like to set a precedent in my classroom that there's an open dialogue, there's open discussion. So from the moment you walk in my classroom, you should know that there's no idea that's going to be swept under the rug. You know, there's definitely an atmosphere that we can talk about anything, because the reality is when they walk out of the school doors, even some of my seniors that are 18 and are driving, the young Hispanic males, African-American males, they need to be aware of these things. And if I don't turn my classroom into a space where they can voice these concerns, I'm doing them a disservice. I wouldn't say that I'm doing anything totally different. I have the conversations, and at the end of the conversation, whatever it is that we're working on, I challenge all my students to a call to action. And this is something that students can do. I think a lot of times we have a perspective from students that just kind of are looking at the world and they have a defeatist attitude. They think that, look, this is just what it is. I can't really do anything. So for all the students on the call, just know that your voice is powerful and there are actions that you can take. Currently at Kennedy High School, I work with a fantastic social studies department, a very diverse department, and they're constantly working to serve our students. And I'll be happy to say that we'll be starting a Black Student Union at our school in the fall, which historically wasn't there.
Yeah, that's good, Biko. I appreciate that. What about, I'm thinking about your county. You're in Montgomery County, very affluent county, right? Very white county. And have you had any frustrations in teaching race or teaching about race?
You cut out a little bit, Doc. Was that for me?
I'm sorry. I was saying, have you run into any frustrations in teaching race? You're in one of the most affluent and white counties in the nation.
Well, there is a little bit because of that in that county. And one of my best experiences so far was serving on a curriculum board to really rewrite part of the United States history curriculum in Montgomery County to sort of reverse some of those attitudes that are prevalent. I think that there's still very much an attitude, a hush-hush attitude when it comes to certain issues that need to be discussed. And one of the things that we did in that curriculum is we made sure that events like Ahmaud Marbury and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd are included in our curriculum so that there's a space to talk about it. And even sitting across some other educators, you know, there's a willingness for them to be open, but it's not enough. There's a lot more push that we need for all educators. And I'll just leave you with this. You know, I think within the past decade or so, the term culturally responsive teacher is really being thrown out there. And I think amid these events, these recent events, you know, you really find out, you know, who your culturally responsive teachers are.
I have those same feelings with Anne Arundel County, which is a neighboring county to where Biko is. We preach and have had equity professional developments for the past 2 years. And then all of a sudden, when it's time to start having these conversations with current events, it is hush hush. It is don't say anything right now. I've really had a lot of disappointment in my district with a superintendent who has released a statement, but then we are not sending resources to parents to support them in these conversations. We're just saying, tell your students to talk with their parents, and that is it. We're being told as teachers, don't have these discussions. Our principals who have luckily have been open-minded to this. I had a meeting with my equity team and my principal yesterday, and I fought as hard as I could to say this is not okay. We are a majority white school, and that was my principal's reasoning for one of the reasons we shouldn't be having these conversations, and I very much informed that that is why we need to have these conversations.
Absolutely, yeah.
Silence is still sending a message. And I think with white students especially, that we are sending the fact that racism is normal, or they're normalizing it, or it's accepted, and it's not. We can't do that. We can't keep using the excuse that white educators don't know how to. We have to put into the work to be actively anti-racist. And I've really pushed for a lot of resistance towards my administrators, and hopefully that will bring some change forward.
Chelsea, say it doesn't bring any change at all, right? Say that they continue to be resistant. Talk to us tonight about you're an educator. You'll probably be a lifelong educator. What is your next move then if they continue to be resistant and don't want you to teach about race in the classroom?
As I've always said, I will shut my door and teach. It's a little different now with e-learning. I will open my screen and teach. I will hope that, as I'm closing up this year, something we really told our principal is, yes, we want to move forward for next year, but we need to do things now. This is urgent. We need to have talks with our children right this second, even though next week is the last week of school. So I think I know my parents this year, and I know where I will face resistance. So I'm hoping to this year still be able to have the conversations and connect it to the curriculum in every way possible. I also have the ground that I teach in an international baccalaureate school, which gives me a lot of leverage to be able to make these connections with reflection and causation and perspective, all these key concepts we use. So I think I can really twist it in that way. And even if I am reprimanded by my principal, I will stand strong, and I know I'm in the right with this, and I'm proud to work with other educators who feel the same way. And if my principal and her aboves can't see that, that's on them, but the kids are in front of me, and I am the one responsible for educating them. So if that comes down on me negatively, it is what it is.
That's good, Chelsea.
Dr.
Hold on one second, Todd. That's good. And don't worry about needing a job. We'll find you a job. You're connected to 100 and some folks on this call, right? The email that has been going out has been going out to over 300 people who registered for this webinar series this week. Don't worry about a job. We'll find you a job, right? Continue teaching the way that you're teaching, okay? I want to shift just for a second. Kim, if you can jump on, Kim, and talk about what the college landscape looks like. We've talked a little bit about high school. What does it look like on the college campus? Was there a statement put forth by the president? What programs are you guys putting in place? What's the Black Faculty Senate discussing?
Yeah, so the chancellor did put out a statement, and which was great. He put out a statement, and so I think around the St. Louis community, there's a lot of civil unrest, and so because we're on the back end of Ferguson, right? And so it's sort of like Ferguson all over again. And so what we're doing is we're making sure that students have a safe space to have conversation. Our Center for Diversity and Inclusion has had conversations with students. They just had something today. Our program will have an event next week to have our students sort of come talk about, have a safe space and a call to action like Bigos talked about, because that's very important. Because at the end of the day, we need to have some demands, right? So what will the university really do? Yeah, we can have safe spaces to have conversations, but what kind of demands will we put on the university to make sure that our community is whole, right? We also, for the Black Faculty and Staff Cabinet, we are having the same safe space kind of conversations, call to actions. We're gonna maybe put forth something, a friend of mine is doing his organization is maybe having a social justice day, right? Everybody get a day off for social justice and sort of come back and reflect, something like that. Some other things that we are talking about doing is working with our police department, right? And making sure that our police department on our campus is ready for, the students that come back. And so what might happen, because the students aren't on campus right now, but having conversations with them, making sure that we're talking with campus partners, making sure that we're getting information out to students, but also that we're giving space for them to have conversations with us and communicate, because sometimes we sort of communicate to them and they don't have the opportunity to continue dialogue with us. So I think that students all over, all races are really upset about this. And what I wanted to add was, I think that this is different because we also now have corporations who are coming out against this. And so that's dealing with economics, like our economy. And so we need to, I think that is what's really different, that people are coming out against this and they have a stand, they're taking a stand. And so, also the other thing that we're doing is making sure that we get our students to vote. That's the biggest thing. Our students, we need to make sure that we're voting in our local elections.
That's right.
Making sure that we're making our state representatives accountable, and our congressmen and senators. And so that's the big push, right? So what are we doing in our communities? How are we, working with our local governments, our state governments, and our federal governments? And so that's one of the things that we're working on. We have events next week and the week after. We're going to also have a panel with some of our leading African-American faculty members to talk about locally, like the St. Louis community, how is this impacting the St. Louis community as well as the country. So.
Yeah, it's good. Todd, jump in because you wear two hats. You are a teacher, but you also are a professor. You teach at Dickinson College. Curious to know about statements that have come out from your school district and or the college.
Yeah. So my big concern when I hear any statement, whether it be from the K-12 level or in higher ed, is, what's the substance of the statement that's being made? Is it just a comment that's saying, we stand here in support of Black lives? When most when I consider institutions of higher ed and K-12 schools, private schools, as well as extensions of society at large. So a lot of the racist baggage that exists and sexist baggage that exists in society that then seeps onto these campuses in these schools. So most schools out there, if not all of them, have a racist history, and that history is not, a long history or a history that occurred 100 years ago. It's a history that occurred last year, and so when these schools are making these statements, and there's certainly going to be alumni that are going to call these schools out on their double standard, on hypocrisy. So those statements need to say, here's what we've done wrong in the past. Here's the inequitable policies we had for our students of color. Here's how we treated our LGBTQ students. And now here's what we're clearly going to do to change. So that's what I would like to see in these statements. And I have not seen it in most of the statements that I've read. And that's at both levels.
Yeah. And kind of getting back to the point that Chelsea had made earlier about teaching teaching students about race. I know that there are going to be those teachers who do not want to teach, or who may need help. Let's just start with the help. They want to know what they can do to provide a lesson plan that would engage students, specifically students of color, and give them a voice in the classroom. Jackie, talk to us just a little bit about how you plan or how you've seen educators engage students, even if they're not Black or brown teachers, they're white educators. How can they better engage students of color in the classroom?
So my background was with the initiative Males of Color, where we track the data for males of color in 8 component areas to include discipline, advanced studies, and a host of other topics where there was a gap. So when I used to go into these schools and coach the staff on their methodology, one of the things that I do with teachers, period, is I need them to reflect on when they were once in high school, when you were in elementary school, because even with something as what most would say is a priority in schools, which is attendance, I would ask them, how many of you walk 1.99 miles to get to school at 6 o'clock in the morning in the dark? How many of you ride 2 buses to school to be there on time? How many of you are on time and you have a car and we need you to teach on time? So these are the things that I do with people of any race, because it would be deceiving to believe that we don't have our own internal racism that occurs within education systems, where people have been indoctrinated to say, well, you'll never be anything, or this is as high as you can aspire to. It's an indoctrination that takes place in these classrooms. So one of the things that I force people to do, or not even force them, I don't like using the word force for that, I want people to really reflect on their own pedagogy, their own state of mind. Because if you know you are a racist and you are teaching children of color, I need you to know that. Because when you act like you don't want to acknowledge it, that's when I know the most egregious things are happening to students of color within the classroom when their doors do close. And so it's walking people through those moments where their experiences are now are now impacting inside the classroom. Because if you already have a negative view of young men of color, how can you teach them? And so my main thing is that when you engage anyone of any race, they need to know where they stand on the topic, and then give them resources that not only educate them on what's going on in society, or what has historically gone on, but you have to charge them to implement. Because it's one thing to listen to information, it's another thing to understand it. And then the main point of even saying anything is so that you implement it. So I don't want teachers to leave any room with listening and understanding. I want them to implement, because that's where the change happens.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So Chelsea and Biko, it's interesting, you know, you're both high school, middle school. How do you engage your parents, right? And Chelsea, we'll start with you. You say you teach at a majority white school, and so imagine that your parents are majority white. I'm just gonna throw that assumption out there. Hopefully I'm right. But how do you engage even your parents around these current events? How do you bring them into the classroom? What are some of the tools that you use to provide parents with the same awareness that you're giving the students?
That's a great question, and I'm trying to think about in person and then also this new world of e-learning, because this may be where we enter into the fall as well. My plan for e-learning was to send an email to parents to let them know we were going to be having these conversations, and to invite them and their children to them, and to kind of work around the rules. I was considering letting them know, if you don't feel comfortable, let me know, and maybe we can have a one-on-one meet set up without the entire class there. I was also hoping to maybe have like a conference with just parents, if they are having a hard time with how to talk to their children, if they are having a hard time with their implicit bias and how they feel, maybe some activities that they can do as an adult and with their children. In person, I like to send a lot of resources home. Any articles that I find, whether in grad school or on my own, I love to share with parents. I think if it helps me, it's going to help a parent with a child at home. So I like to send those home with kids and encourage parents to read them. Class Dojo or any type of communication tool, I'll post something that we did in the classroom and ask parents how they can go home and make those connections deeper. So what perspectives can you share to deepen your students' understanding of this topic, or how can you shed light in a different way that maybe we didn't? And I also really push for reflection. So how did you learn about these topics as a kid in this grade? How can you make those connections with your kids? I think some parents, this school, when they became an IB school, we had parents who were challenging the fact that students were going to be learning Spanish. So that can kind of give you an idea of some of the mindsets that exist. So there are some very adamant people to these changes. So I think some you have to go a little bit slower and steadier, even though I don't like doing that. And some they're a little bit more ready, but they don't know the next steps. So I think just being open and non-judgmental if they come to you, and having that open conversation and saying, hey, look, I wasn't always where I am now. I've had to do the work, and here's how I did that. Maybe this can help you too. I think it's a good way to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Biko, what about you? What are you doing to engage parent engagement? Biko, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now? We good? Yeah, I can echo a lot of those thoughts that Chelsea just shared. I mean, I like to keep a lot of open communication with my parents as well as my students. I've taught in classrooms that have been 100% African American to now teaching in classrooms where it's a little bit more of a mixed bag of more Hispanics, African American, to children of immigrants from African countries, Hispanic countries. So I wouldn't say there's a different approach to the parents that I engage. I just make sure that there's an open line of communication. Yes, you know, right now we're dealing with George Floyd, but again, you know, these are things that have been happening. So at one of my previous schools, not only did I get a few students to participate in some activism on the mall, there was a speech happening on the mall in DC regarding gentrification. And I got some parents and students from my class to come out there, and they were able to see it firsthand. So in addition to sharing those resources, you know, I just try to stay aware of what's happening in the city. I was teaching in a school in Northeast DC, a neighborhood that is currently being gentrified. And in order for my students to really understand what's happening around them, I had to get them out to events like this and hear what people have to say. And I had to get their parents as well. And that's a culture that I have to start. I think teachers should start that. And I think when you start that, it trickles. And then you have more and more students that are becoming more involved. So that's one of the ways that I engage my students as well as my parents.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. So we're going to tag team this question because we're going to do one more round of questions with the educator panelists. So Kim, I want you to start with this one, and then Todd, I want you to kind of bring, kind of end this question, and then we'll continue moving on until we're done. There was a comment in the chat box, Kim, about educators needing to become aware of their unconscious bias, right? And so Kim, what advice, what counsel can you provide for educators to become aware of their unconscious bias?
So I think that, so I'll just say that there are plenty of like places in St. Louis in particular around, you know, knowing your whiteness and that kind of thing. I can't remember what it's called, but, you know, folks go and sort of talk about their unconscious biases. But we also have at the university in our student affairs department, we've had unconscious bias training by our Center for Diversity and Inclusion. And so I think that not only like HR saying, okay, you need to sort of go through these trainings, we have also an academy where she deals with specifically with staff members, you know, having them go through some unconscious bias trainings. I think that all educators need to go through it because we all have some kind of bias, right? So just knowing that everybody has bias, but as long as you're aware of it, I think that's the most powerful thing. So I think going into it knowing everybody has some kind of unconscious bias. So let's talk about it. Let's open up about it. And I think not being afraid, right? To go to some of these courses or classes, or if there's some kind of diversity and inclusion, HR at wherever you work, having those open conversations, talk to the principal about it, have conversations with your coworkers. And I think that's the most important, right? Because if you start having these conversations, then it'll help other people start thinking about it. They'll go home and start talking to their friends and their circles about it. And so that's how it starts and flows. But I think it's important for us to all know that we do have unconscious bias and to be aware of it, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
How you can sort of balance that or cope with it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Kim, stay on that vein for 1 second. Todd, I'm coming to you in a minute because I want to ask this, Kim. You're part of one of the most illustrious sororities on the planet, right? And I think that when a lot of people look at Black fraternities and Black sororities, we're talking tonight, that there's this sense that Black fraternities and Black sororities are militant, right? They're not, they don't embrace other races, or they're not conscious of their own biases. Talk about maybe some of the programs that your organization does to, embrace or bring the races together.
So we have, educational programs, we have Delt Teens, other programs that we bring folks together. But I just saw a program, the other day, all of the sororities, all the presidents were on Girl Trip.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a beautiful thing to sort of bring everybody together around women's health. And I think that the fraternities and sororities are really the NPHC in general are getting together to talk about how can we dismantle racism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we get together and make sure that we're all one, right? We're not separate, we're all one, we're all, going towards the same goal. I think that it's powerful in numbers, right? If we all work together instead of apart. And we're not militant, right? We are all trying to get a collective goal, whatever women's health, talking about social justice, the March on Washington. I mean, it started with the March on Washington, right? The 1913 suffrage movement action. But I think that if we all stick together as NPHC, we could really do some powerful things. And so they are not militant groups. They're not like, some people call them gangs. They're not gangs.
Right.
But I think that if we all came together for one collective effort, like,
sure.
Right? So we all just need to vote one thing, right? Or we all need to change voting rights, or we all need to call our senators and congressmen around a particular thing. But I think one thing about this movement, about what's happening now, is that we need to figure out what policies need to be changed, not only just on the local levels, because I'm stopped right outside your door, like what's happening in your local county, right? Your local municipality. And then what's happening on your state level, what's happening on the federal level. But we all need to come together as a collective to get in that room to change those policies.
Yeah.
So I think for NPHC, it's powerful, right? If we together and sort of have those collective efforts. I know we also have like Delta Days at the state capitol, and we also have Delta Days at the nation's capital. And so those are the times that we go and we talk to folks around the issues that we need to be solved. But if we all did it I think it would be more powerful.
Yeah, we got to do a Greek night, an NPHC night. Maybe I'll put one of those in a couple of weeks, because you're right.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
With the Divine Nine, we could probably have a lot of good thought and conversation. Todd, a similar question that I brought up earlier about educators being unaware of their unconscious bias in the role that plays in education. Todd, if you could talk just briefly about the course you created in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, as a white teacher in an all-white county, all-white district. You teach a course that you created. Talk about that for a minute, and then also tie in, Todd, how you can help educators become aware of their unconscious bias.
So after Charlottesville in 2017, I created a seminar course on race, critical race studies at a majority white school. There's 75% of the student population there is white, 99% of the teaching staff is white. 10 years ago, it was even worse than that. So I created this course at this school, and anyway, it was really interesting the first year, the kind of backlash that I received and we endured, my students and I endured during that year, both from people within inside the school, but also outside of the school. But we have to recognize that there are, and this will get directly to your question, that there's about 200 years of three major defects in education. That's racial isolation, it's monocultural curricula that privileges white students, and it's color evasive teaching methods. So I wanted to create a class that would counter all three of those things. So I created a course that centers race in it. And what that allows us to do, I know Biko mentioned about the open dialogues. I mean, it's a method of instruction that teaches critical thinking, not teaching students not what to think, but teaching them how to think. So that pedagogical practice is a democratized classroom where the students' voices are valued the same. And that includes my voice. So my voice is not above theirs. And so we prime students as critical agents, Jason, to do the work of social change and reform once they're done. And the curriculum itself combats generations of miseducation and misrepresentation and learning experiences by placing race at the center. And it also encourages me and any other instructor that wants to engage in this, like Chelsea, to challenge this, to take an unapologetic approach to challenge the status quo of what the institutional culture is at the school. Now, how does this help with implicit bias? Mm-hmm. So it's important for understand that, as Kim mentioned earlier, she talked about, this kind of militant perception about, the Black Panthers, Black Power movement and whatnot. These biases are shaped by our socialization, our peer groups, our education, our the places we worship, and the media. So I find a line, like you take implicit bias, and there's a line of things that create the way that you interact with other people, starting with your perceptions. So when you're born and you're raised, you have this mechanism of the mind working where you hit record and you associate all these different things with all these groups of people based on what you see. If you live in an all-white bubble, fishbowl, and you don't interact with people of color, your only interaction with them is on a TV, on a 6 o'clock news, or it's watching them play sports. And that's how you know people of color if you're not around them. So you become associated like that. That creates the stereotypes or the traits. And based on those traits, then you develop your prejudices, which is your likes and your dislikes. And that then creates a discriminatory behavior. That's the impact that implicit bias has. And if you are in a position of authority, like a teacher or a coach or whatever it might be, and you're impacting young ones, then you could do damage to them because they will conform. It's called stereotype threat, right? They will conform to the way that you're treating them. And so they will then succumb to those stereotypes. So I encourage folks to then engage, as I think it was Kim, or maybe it was Jacqueline, that talked about this self-reflection. I call it, Jason, archaeology of the self, right? Where you kind of dig into those perceptions and you challenge yourself in a large part on your own color blindness, or color evasiveness, or color silence. Because what all that does is it blinds white folks to the world that we had created, and it makes us treat people of color and gay people and Muslim people and Jewish people as if they're all straight, white, and Christian. Right. So if anyone's looking for something to do, and I'll stop, Google the Harvard Implicit Association Test, and right there you can start your journey by taking a look at where your biases lie.
Hey, Todd, put it in the chat box. The chat box is open. People are sharing some great resources. There's a ton of educators that are on this call that are filling that box. So just add that there, Todd. Jackie, I'm curious. Todd mentioned one word that really stands out, and that's damaging, right? And so as a Latin educator, talk about the damage that is done when we're not teaching about race in the classroom, right? The damage that is done when we want our children to think about the notion of being colorblind, right? The damage that is done when we don't educate them about real history and not about what the history that those who create textbooks want us to know, right? So Jackie, talk about how it damages students when we don't have these discussions in class.
When I think about the word damage, I don't even want to use the word damage. It's impacting in a negative way. And so what happens is that when you don't talk about culture, when you're not inclusive of someone else's history, whether it gives a negative connotation to your history, it makes the child feel as if they are not included. It's like the only history that matters is your rendition of the history. The only history that occurred is your version of the history. The only people that were inventors in the world was your family and your legacy and your descendants, and the list goes on. So in my household, I have a book that's called African American First. My children read those things. I have a book about Dominican Republic and the history of Dominican Republic, the Haitian and cultural divide in Dominican Republic, because there's a reality in experience outside of America. When I go to teach my children history, I take the American history, I take what other people say about our American history, because to other people, we're called the Western Hemisphere. We don't reference ourselves as the Western Hemisphere, we just say America. And that is where the problem is. We're not even identifying ourselves correctly, because we're not even inclusive of anybody else's version of what happened in the slave trade, what happened during slavery. Why did it take, why was New Jersey one of the last states to eradicate slavery in the North? See, Those are the real conversations. And when you don't have those conversations in the classroom, it makes people feel almost a sense of delusionment, because in my household, I'm teaching all of the things that really occur. So this is why it is important for families to have very transparent conversations, though they are difficult, though they make you uncomfortable. You have to tell your children the reality of history from your version, from your experiences, so they have something to balance that on, because it is impacting students negatively. Because then when they go to college campuses and it's a majority of white students, that's what happens. Their voice is silenced because your history really didn't exist here. Every picture on the wall is Caucasian. That doesn't inspire me.
You just dropped the mic. Oh, okay. I thought that maybe there was a little glitch. Jackie just dropped the mic. I feel it. Okay. Chelsea and Biko, I want you to answer this question. Students are getting ready to go home for the summer break. Probably will still be in COVID in some states. And so I'm curious, what resources, and maybe you can drop some in the chat box too, what things should students be doing over the summer? A, and then B, how do you plan on maintaining contact with students over the summer?
Doc, I could go ahead and go.
Oh, great. You go, Biko. I was wondering who was going. Y'all playing double dutch.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of students, sometimes they see everything that's happening around them and they feel like there's not much that they can do. But there is. In fact, there's, I think I may have shared this, the flyer with you for a peaceful protest that's happening in DC on Saturday. There's also another one happening on Sunday. So I would encourage students to continue to research these peaceful protests and to, just voice their opinions. Since everyone's been on these, on online learning, Zoom calls have just been, everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
So, similar to what you're doing here, Doc, is just, using this Zoom platform to open dialogue. I have this with my students every week, and I'm going to continue to do that because when they feel like that they have a place to continue to voice their concerns and what they're seeing, specifically their emotions, because I think when we see these protests, we can also see the dark side of it, where we're seeing a lot of these rioters, and and these rioters are young, their minds are everywhere, they're feeling anger, they're feeling pain, and they want to destroy things, right? So the more students, young students, college, high school students that we can get on these calls, even throughout the summer, we can give them a place to breathe, right? And to realize, hey, like, some of these riots, that's not the right way. Come, let's discuss, and let's see what we can create so that you can do in the community with your community.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful. Chelsea, what about you?
So my fifth graders are getting ready to enter the world of middle school, and I hope that a lot of the tools that I give them are more around mindset. I hope that through what we've done over the year has helped them to build empathy and to always consider other perspectives so that they can take action to make more things more equal and to be anti-racist. I have been given directives of how to shut down my Google Classroom for the summer, but I don't plan on doing that. I plan on using that still and posting resources and checking in with the kids on the stream and asking what have they done to take action. I actually have a student who has done an extended project about wanting to talk to the Board of Education about getting young students, especially kindergarten and first grade, to have these difficult conversations, and not just with the guidance counselor who comes in, with their teachers and in their classroom. So I plan on helping that student throughout the summer and hopefully getting some others involved too, to speak for the Board of Ed as a student-led initiative. I just really want my white students to understand the privileges that they have and how to use them for good to better themselves and to better others. And I think that I have done the work this year to make sure that they understand their perspective versus another person, so that they can truly hear and see situations in a different way than what their parents may or the news may. So I'm still thinking of other ways to give them some resources over the summer, but I hope what I give them goes with them more long term.
Okay, I appreciate that. Last question, Todd, I want you to answer this one, and then we're about to bring our students on and have them engage us all in discussion as well. Todd, there was a question in the chat box that said, if I hear from parents, I support Black Lives Matter, am I now saying blue lives do not matter? Todd, if you could speak on that.
Yeah, so the question is getting at the whole Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter dichotomy here. You know, when Jesus was on the mountain talking about the poor, you didn't hear folks saying, well, there's more than just poor people out here. You know, but he was speaking toward the poor. The poor are the ones that are under attack at this particular moment. So in no way has Black Lives Matter ever meant that all lives don't matter or blue lives don't matter. What we're talking about a group of people that have literally been under attack, physical and psychological violence for the duration of American history. And people have just let that happen. So that is an attempt to raise awareness about what is actually happening in that community. And it's not to neglect anything from any other group, racial group or gender group.
Yeah, we can hear you, Doc.
What's up, team?
Yo.
What's up with y'all? Y'all deep tonight. Okay.
Deep.
The whole team is there. All right. Good to see y'all. Okay, so let me make sure I got all the students. Aaron, are you here? Aaron, where are you? Aaron, where are you, Aaron? Aaron, I know you hit me in the chat. I thought I made you a co-host. I made you a co-host now. Aaron, make sure you take your mic off. Make sure I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Aaron, good to see you, sir. Okay. All right, we got the whole team here. Hey, it's good to see all of y'all. It's amazing to get a chance tonight for this next hour to hear from all of you students. And I think we spend so much time just talking about what educators can do, and educators spending so much time talking about what they can do, right? And I think it's so incumbent and important that we hear from our students. And so tonight, students, you've got a room full of parents and educators. You will be talking about some of the pains you've been experiencing, some of the things that you're hopeful for, some advice to some of us, right? Because, you know, we're getting older, you know what I mean? We're slowing down a little bit. So it'd be great to have some fresh ideas, and I know that you all have those tonight. If I'm missing any students that's supposed to be up here, just shoot me a text in the chat, and we'll go from there. My partner in crime, my brother, business partner, Cliff Knights is on the call. Cliff, where you at?
I'm here, brother. What's going on with you?
Cliff, good to see you, brother. Before we get started with the students, Cliff is the CEO of Independent Medical Group. We are working on several ventures together, and all of our ventures are around providing equitable opportunities for students of color, particularly from communities that we were born and raised in. Cliff, born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. I grew up in Washington, D.C. Cliff's a transplant to Florida, South Florida. Now I'm back in D.C. And so we have just kind of partnered and are engineering some amazing projects for students of color. Cliff, I want you to spend a couple of minutes talking about the Young CEO Project. You are the co-founder of that project, and I want you to just kind of share with the audience what that project is all about and how it impacts and will help our community.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate y'all coming out tonight. So the Young CEO Project, me and Jason came up with this, trying to think about how we can encourage young men and women of color from underserved communities to own their own businesses, right? And a lot of times we don't get the same opportunities that the white community has to own your own business, right? There's a lot of hoops that we got to jump through to try to own our own business. So me and Jason said, hey, let's put our heads together and figure out how we can put a curriculum with BICO and with some other people, Bree, Erica, and all the boys here, put our heads together to figure out how to put the most comprehensive curriculum, project-based learning together so we can say, hey guys, let me show you how to be a CEO, right? That's why it's called Young CEO Project. Opportunity for 3 months, 90 days to put themselves in a position to say, hey, here goes my business plan. Here goes the projects that I'm going through to say, I want to be a CEO. And I need you all to teach me how to be a CEO. And this is my business model, but I have no clue how to do a business plan. I have no clue how to incorporate a company. I have no clue how to do finances and a financial plan. These are all the things that I had to learn at 20 years old when I first started owning my own business. And 20 years later, I went through a lot of hoops, bumped my head a lot of times. And I said, I have 4 boys myself, 4 Black men I'm raising in America. So I was just trying to figure out how to give them a head start and create jobs. Don't go and get a job.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Really briefly, Cliff, and I want to give it over to the students, man. Just talk about some of the lessons that you have taught your sons about just, education and entrepreneurship. I think you've married the two. I think we've taught our children for years education only, but you have taught them education and entrepreneurship. Tell us why you've done that.
I didn't go to school. To God be the glory, I went to school of hard knocks. I didn't go to college. I damn near made it out of high school. But I'm gonna tell you, my wife got 3 degrees, So me and her have that conversation all the time on what is and what isn't, right? But they see me and they know that I preach own your own at all times. And my wife got her last degree and now she runs the company with us. She works with the company with us as a nurse practitioner. So this is everything they're seeing within the family, that we're creating something, right? And we're creating that between ourselves, So that's what we preach to our boys, is they can do anything they want to do, obviously, but we would like them to own something, right? Be passionate about something, own something, and just don't own one, own several.
I appreciate that, Cliff. Great to have you on the call tonight, brother.
I appreciate you.
Okay, Bree, hope you can hear me. Bree, talk to us about how the deaths of recent deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd has affected you personally, and then affected even your classmates. You're a recent graduate from a school in Washington, D.C., and so talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So I've been struggling a lot recently. I'm kind of just dealing with everything in the media. This isn't something that's new. It's something that, throughout my experiences, throughout my familial's experiences, it's something that it comes to the forefront every day of my life. I can't walk away from it. I'm a daughter to a Black man. I'm a sister to 2 Black men. It's something I carry with me every day. Even in light of the death of Breonna Taylor, I think a lot of people forget that Black women are also at risk out here too. The conversation doesn't exclude us. That's why Say Her Name was a thing and still is. So I think it's important that we center the conversation around those things. But I've been struggling. It's been difficult because it's hard to step away. It's something that it's constantly seen, constantly there, constantly exists. It's something that I have to go throughout my whole life thinking about and being conscientious of. So one of the things that I think poses as the most frustrating for me is the institution that I was attending wasn't really any different than what we're seeing right now. I remember going to American and sitting in meetings with, not even DCPD, but AUPD, and having conversations about how they treat Black students on campus, how they choose to carry themselves, how they choose to conduct themselves when in the presence of a Black student versus in the presence of a white student, and what policies in the institution actually protect them in that type of behavior. And that was something that was at the forefront of my year for the latter part of my senior year at AU, something that as the president of BSU, I was at the forefront of, and trying to figure out how to make sure the students' voices were heard and there. I think from what I've seen and the individuals that I've spoken to, I've had a lot of friends checking up on me lately, and I really appreciate that. And the conversations kind of go back and forth about recent events. But unfortunately, you know, they're feeling similar to I am. A lot of the kids that I went to school with still go to AU. They're still attending the institution. They still have to deal with some of the things that even I was dealing with, trying to make it so that they wouldn't have to deal with it next year. There's still problems there. There's still issues there. The questions are still unanswered. So I think right now what I'm dealing with is a larger scale of that, something that I always knew existed and that always was prevalent in my life, but now just, you know, is personified and echoed based upon the school that I just attended and left. So.
Yeah, Rhea, I appreciate that. Lauren, jump on in. Lauren, you're calling from California, one of my favorite cousins in the world. You're a rising senior in high school. Tell us, you know, how the deaths of these 3 African-American young folks has impacted your world, and even, you know, those that you go to school with. Say it again, Lauren. Take your mic off your mute. Say it again.
I'm sorry, am I off mute now?
You're good now.
Okay. I said it's very heartbreaking and it makes me angry because not just because another innocent Black man has lost his life, it's the fact that how social media is taking this as a joke. I have seen so-called trends that people think are funny called the George Floyd challenge, where someone puts their knee on another person's neck as a joke, thinking that that's funny. And to see that people are commenting as if it's funny too. But then we have people that are not only reporting it, but saying this is not right, you guys are being inconsiderate, and it just sucks that there are ignorant, immature people in this world that do not see this as a problem. And then we have other people also posting that Black people, you just need to stop being a threat. Well, how do we stop being a threat if we're constantly being stereotyped? If you guys aren't giving us a chance to not be a threat, you guys still see us no matter what as, oh, they probably are part of a gang, or, oh, they are not from the right neighborhood. Like, we can't break these stereotypes if you don't give us a chance. And to see another African-American killed on the news, it's not like it's the first time, but to see another one is just like heartbreaking for me.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing. Aaron, you're on the East Coast. I hope you can hear me. Talk to us. You're a rising sophomore, American University, Washington, D.C. Tell us how all of this has impacted your world.
It's been really tough. I think for me, because I live in the New York City area, the moment that's really been heavy on my heart has been the Amy Cooper situation, where I don't know if you guys know, but like a white woman called the cops on a Black bird watcher, who told her to police on a dog because that was the park's policy. And that moment has been the one that's really been sticking with me because, you know, being is that I'm from New York, and that's why I reside my whole life. I've had interactions with the police, and then seeing a white woman who knew how to so carefully bring fear to a Black man by calling the cops and saying an African American man is threatening me. That has been heavy on my heart for these past few weeks. And I think for me, a big question has become, you know, what does it mean as a Black man to be American? I think when you look at American history, you only see the oppression of Black people, and as many strides as Black people have made in this country, we tend to take 2 steps and then take 3 steps back and forth. So for me, it's been a really, really pressing question to be like, you know, who am I as an American? What does it mean to be a Black man and to be American? Because women like Amy Cooper, who know so well how the system works in our favor and can so easily and so precisely use that to bring fear to another American, for me, it's kind of like, well, then am I American, right? Like what does it mean to be an American as a Black man if my body can so easily be taken and robbed by the police? So I think that all the events that have gone on these past few weeks, especially in New York with looting in neighborhoods like the Bronx and Harlem, it's just been really hard to cope with. But it's more of how, even though these events are going on and we are hoping for change, that there are still people like Amy Cooper who can so easily take a Black man's life by just saying the words, "an African American man is threatening me." And so for all the Black people that I've spoken to from American University and from my neighborhood and from my community, we've all really been talking about what it means to be American, and how people like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, like, who were they as Americans, and how did America fail them?
That's a great question, Aaron, for us as educators to answer, right? The question, "Am I next?" was on a small board that a young man held, maybe 7, 8 years old. And now, Aaron, tonight you asked the question, "Am I American?" That's a very, very heavy-weighted question that we as educators really need to answer for our students. I'm glad that you brought that up. Isaac Bynum, go ahead, sir, and talk to us about how all of this has impacted your world.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, I feel like this has been more of a wake-up call to my fellow white students. I feel like they can now have like a portion of what it looks like to be Black in America. When I've been I would say in the education system, there are certain teachers and even the curriculum itself that has lacked when it comes to the education of racism and things of that nature. I think sometimes it's seen as more of an obligation to teach this instead of like a passion and something that's necessary. So I'm just saying, I think that it's this over the past week, it's definitely sparked a conversation among everybody, including me and my friends. We've had like conversations about what we feel is right, what's going on, what we feel is wrong. What we can do as young people to help, fix the situation and help, topple the current institutions that are allowing for racism. And it runs deep in America. But I feel like when I said earlier, white people are definitely seeing exactly, they're more aware of what's going on. Like when it comes to microaggressions, I remember I would sit in class all the time. People would be like, wow, you're very articulate, or you're one of the whitest Black dudes that I know. Like when they believe that this is meant more as a compliment. So when I'm angry and try to, educate them about what they just said, they're then like, well, I was, just making a joke or whatever. But I do, however, think that this right now is definitely a much needed effort. And I'm definitely excited to see how we will combat this and what we do in the future.
Isaac, you make a great point, that the commentary for Black and brown children is you sound articulate. How the hell else am I supposed to sound? If my parents sent me to school and educated me, what the hell did you think I was supposed to sound like, right? And it's just sad that is a commentary amongst Black and brown students when they do achieve things. Even in the news, when I see pictures of valedictorians who are Black, or valedictorians who are brown, as if Black people and brown people aren't smart, right? It's almost like displaying them in society would have it seem like it's a positive thing to show and showcase, but in reality, it's almost like a slap in the face. So I'm glad that you brought that point up. Shamir, if you can hear me, if you could talk about friendship. You're in South Florida, Shamir, and I'm curious to know, because of all the things that have been happening amongst, the races, where you are in South Florida, has it divided you and your friends? Have you lost some friends? Have you noticed on social media that, some people who you were cool with, you're no longer cool with? Talk about friendship now as a young person.
You guys hear me?
Yep.
All right. So my name's Shamir. Good night, everyone. I live in South Florida area. And friends, honestly, not that I have anything against other people that aren't the same color as my skin. Not that I have any problem with them, but I don't really have any friends of that color, honestly. But the friends that I do have that, well, not really friends, but associates that I do have of that color, they don't really speak much about it. I haven't really heard them speak much about it. And when I do, it's a little arrogant. But, I'm a very cool and nonchalant person, so I don't let it get to me, but it is still a knock on me. For example, my stepfather, he has a very close friend, and he's known him for probably 11 years. And after all this was going on, he was like, yo, I'm gonna see what he's posting about it. So he went on his page and he was blocked. He blocked him. So, I mean, it's just it's a coincidence how all this happens and you block a friend that you've known that's of color for 10 years. And because I guess you don't want them to see what you're saying or whatever the case may be. Most of the people that I associate with are all in this room.
Amen. Yo.
These are all the people that I usually talk to. We're very proud to be the color that we are. It's sickening that we have to think about every day driving on the street like, damn, what if I get pulled over going 15 miles over the speed limit and I could die? Like that's it. We shouldn't have to think like that. And that's just what I have. That's my input on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Shamir. Bree, you're one of the most gentrified cities in America. I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., but Washington, D.C., when I was coming up, was called Chocolate City. It ain't so chocolate.
It ain't chocolate no more.
Anymore. So, being at an institution in D.C., talk about the friendships you've gained over the 4 years you were in college, and now that these things have happened, how have maybe some of those friendships changed, or how have some of those friendships strengthened?
Absolutely. So going to school in DC was interesting to me because I grew up and it was dope kind of hearing from some of the educators that we had earlier because they were speaking to counties that I'm very familiar with. I grew up in Carroll County. For those of you who are educators who are still on the call and know Carroll County, I think it's like one of the second whitest counties in Maryland, and their education system really reflects that. So leaving that, I left an environment which was full of white people, and white people in the sense of people that, were dope and like I had friendships with going into college, and then people that by the time my high school career ended, I was like kind of done with that. And once I stepped into college, that was sort of my first space of understanding and constructing like lifelong and fully involved friendships because I knew what those looked like now. So some of my friends from high school I still have my girls, Ashley and Shanice. I still talk to them all the time. But a lot of the people that I used to associate with outside of that, it was funny. I think Shamir talked on one of having an individual in his life that kind of shows a side. I came across somebody that I followed on Instagram that went to high school with me and we were friends. He used to be a former law enforcement officer. And I think the day after Blackout Tuesday, he posted a black screen with a blue line through it, and he hashtagged it Blue Lives Matter. So after that, me being the individual that I am, I don't really cause confrontation, but I'm also not somebody in a lot of the friendships that I associate with that you expect me to be somebody that, kind of keeps an eye out for things like that. So I just sent him a DM, and I just let him know that, like, I would be unfollowing him, and I have really no further understanding or need to conduct myself with him because he doesn't really understand who I am as an individual. But that wasn't something that was very difficult for me. But in college, I met some really dope people, people that I still talk to even after graduating, people that still attend American now, people that are still in the DC area. I was fortunate enough to have a father that attended Howard University. And I kind of got to experience firsthand through, him kind of taking me around, showing me the places that he went to at Howard, showing me the places that, he resided in at Howard and near Howard that are terribly gentrified now, that don't even look the same compared to where he was and where he stayed and his experiences there at Howard University. So that witnessing that and having that individual to sort of guide and outline that experience for me kind of put it to the forefront of what I was stepping into when I started attending AU.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bree. Lauren, you're an athlete. You've played soccer since you was a tiny little girl. I remember going out to one of your games, maybe that was one of your sister's games. I think it was your game years ago. And you're a standout athlete. You have played on soccer teams that are multiracial, right? Talk to us about maybe how those relationships remain the same, or have they changed since all the things that have been going on?
Well, from a soccer aspect right now, I have seen many of my teammates not only post Black screens on the day of Blackout Tuesday, but they have been posting on their stories informational posts that explain why Black Lives Matter and why it's not all lives matter. Like, they're saying it's Black Lives Matter because that is the problem right now. So as a soccer aspect, I do not see any of them as a problem. But from someone who goes to a predominantly white school and lives in a predominantly white city, I have had white friends my entire life. I have been the only Black one in my friend group, in my church small group, in my soccer team, like, for many years. So it's nothing that I am not used to. I'm used to being the only dark one in that setting. But with everything going on right now, it has showed me my true friends, without a doubt. From freshman year to junior year, I would say I had the same friends. Like, nothing really changed to anything. They grew and I met new people as well as those people. But now hearing people slide up on my posts, because I'm very vocal on social media. I post what I believe is right. So I'll have people slide up and say, I do not think it's fair of you to do this and that. And I'm like, and they'll say, why don't all lives matter? Why are you only saying Black Lives Matter when there are crimes happening to all people everywhere? Okay, crimes, that's a very broad statement to say. Crimes, okay? Is it police officers with unarmed African Americans consistently? No, but instead of saying, no, you're right, they continue to say, but what happens if in Italy? Okay, but are we in Italy right now? Why are we going to focus on another continent city outside of where we're living? We need to focus on the US right now, because that's where we live. That's what we have to deal with, like, hand on to start. So I've had things like that. And I have had people, out of all the things I post, they decide to single out one thing and say, oh, what about this one small sentence that this person said in this video? I had one where it was, I think it was screenshots of different things posted on Twitter. And one of them just happened to be about Trump. And I had someone say, why are you singling out Trump for saying the word thugs? And I was like, well, for you, you are white and you do not know that the word thugs has been used to Black people only, has been used thug, oh, when you think of thug Black people are terrible, this, that. And I explained to him, there's a movie called The Hate U Give, and it talks about, it goes of the subject of this. And I was like, please, if you have time to watch this video. And after that, the conversation kind of died, and that person respects me still, and I still respect that person. And ever since then, I feel like that person has been more like, oh, can you help me understand this and that? So there are people like that of my friends that will ask me questions. Instead of attacking me, they will ask me questions. Hey, can you explain why this, and that? And I'll say, absolutely. Because I see, if I am just coming off and explaining it to them rather than personally saying, no, you cannot say this, and I target them, they are not going to want to listen to me. They're going to be like, okay, she's coming at me. Why would I want to listen to her? Instead, I will come off nicely and I will say this, I will give information as best as I can, and I will provide sources if possible so they can also do the learning themselves and not just seeing what social media is putting out there. Because social media does post some good things, but they also post some things that make everything seem like what is happening bad.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Lauren, I appreciate that. Teach one, reach one. That's great that you're doing that. Aaron, you're in New York. Talk to us a little bit about your friendships maybe at AU, and now that you've transitioned back home. Have they changed for the bad? Have they strengthened for the good?
I think ever since I've been home, a lot of my relationships have changed for the bad. And I've noticed a lot with a lot of the white people that I associated with. There's been this kind of new defense for why they don't participate in the conversation about Black Lives Matter. I spoke to my friend yesterday, and he brought the point. He was like, you know, I'm Jewish. You know, I'm not white. I'm Jewish. I get prosecuted. And, you know, I've had a lot of people, my friends who are Irish and who are Italian, who say the same thing. It's like, oh, I'm Italian. I've been prosecuted. Oh, I'm Irish. I've been prosecuted. Why is it that, like, y'all aren't talking about me? You know, I told him, I was like, when someone sees you, they don't see Jewish. They see white. They look at me, they see Black. You know, I can't avoid this. I can't avoid being Black. I can't avoid being myself. But when the system looks at you, they see a white person. As a white person, you are at a higher status than I. You have to tell someone, oh, I'm Jewish or I'm Italian. I don't have to tell nobody I'm Black. That's what they see. And even explaining that, you know, there was still that insecurity that, like, oh, he's attacking, you know, me being Jewish, me being Italian. Like, I'm not talking about that. You know, I'm talking about what people see on the outside, and how on the outside, when people see, or when the system sees Black, they say all these other things about what is in that Black person, right? Versus that of a white person. So I think for me, a lot of my friendships have definitely gone in the gutter because, you know, they're developing new ways and new excuses for not being a part of the conversation and for not supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think it's been really, really hard to have these conversations because a lot of times, you know, they try to end it off with like, oh, we're good, right? And I'm like, it's not a simple we're good, you know? It's about you doing the work to understand the world that I live in. Because for me personally, I don't tend to allow my white friends talk about, you know, talk about how I feel being a Black man in America. I don't tend to have those conversations. And now because of everything that's going on, I feel more empowered to do so. And I realize that my negligence in not speaking about these issues with them for the past 4 years while in high school or 1 year while at AU, they don't see me as having problems with being Black, you know? They only say, oh, it's this one instance, this one isolated instance somewhere, like George Floyd is one isolated instance, Breonna Taylor is one isolated instance, you know? And that's been really difficult for me, you know? But then again, I have to continue to have these conversations as hard as they may be, just in the hopes that they will start to unravel, to understand, and to do the work, to do better and be better for all people. Because at the end of the day, as much as I'm screaming Black Lives Matter, when I scream Black Lives Matter, if Black Lives matter, all lives matter too, right? And I think it's very powerful that there are so many people of different races coming out to speak about Black Lives Matter. But I still want to preach the fact that even though I'm preaching Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, right? Black lives has been used as a, I think, umbrella for all minority groups in the U.S. And I think that, you know, when we rise, other minorities will rise as well, because the systemic racism in America, as much as it is targeted at Black people, is targeted at all minorities as well. So, you know, it's a situation of when I rise, you rise as well. So I really hope to, you know, with the white people in my community to continue having these conversations. And even if my friendships go into the gutter, so what, right? I have to keep moving. I have to keep pushing, and I have to keep the conversation going, and I have to continue doing my work.
Appreciate it, Aaron. For those who are still locked into the call, you're hearing from 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-old students tonight who are talking about some of the travesties that they've experienced in their own personal lives. And I think sometimes as adults, especially educators, we don't always think about what our children are going through. We think about all the pressures we have in our jobs, but our children have just as many or more pressures when they have to go to school every day or be outside in the community. And so I hope that many of those who are on the call tonight are taking notes or going to carve out some time to spend with our youth to really understand what they're facing. And I'm not just saying facing as in academic rigor, facing as in cultural and social capital, We can't continue to lose Black and brown students to depression. And so if you don't check in emotionally with your students and with your nieces and nephews and loved ones, we're doing ourselves a disservice as a community. Isaac, I want to come to you and ask the same question. You mentioned earlier, Isaac, that you had been labeled as being really articulate and sounding white and some of these other things you shared. How have your relationships or friendships changed in the last couple of months?
Good question. I would definitely say that my friendships and relationships have been eye-opening for sure. Through social media and other agents, we can really broadcast what our thoughts are about the current situation, and I can see exactly what people are thinking. And I think from all sides, it's important to have the discussion. So I welcome anybody who has an opinion or a statement or a fact, and then we can discuss exactly what is going on. And I think that with me and my friends, I'm definitely seeing exactly where people stand when it comes to this. Like Aaron said, we're having a bunch of different topics, whether it's about the prison labor system or whether it's about what Trump has said during that day, or things of that nature, whether Blue Lives Matter, like Mr. Todd was talking about earlier. I'm definitely picking the brains of all my friends to see exactly where they stand. So yes, sir. I think also it's apparent to see those in my generation who are trying to actively, it's not like they're having honest questions and discussions, but they're actually actively really targeting the Black Lives Matter movement to nitpick and just see exactly what they can do to prove us wrong, per se, which is pretty frustrating at the least. So really, it's about really educating the people on exactly what is happening, our experiences as Black people, and the facts. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Aiden, can you hear me? Hey, Aiden, come to the mic, brother. Aiden, you are a rising junior, right, in high school? Turn your mic on, Aiden. Turn your mic on. You still on mute? There you go.
Yeah. We out here. What's up?
Rising junior in high school, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so of all the things that have been happening, you return back to school, Aiden, in the fall. The fall will be here before you know it. What are some of the things that you want your teachers to talk about and discuss in class, right? We know that you have to study your major subject areas, but what conversations have you not had a chance to have now that you would like your teachers to make room for?
I feel like, yes, we learned a lot of stuff that we haven't gotten a chance. They like hide a lot of information from us. That's what I feel like they do. And I feel like I'd like for them to focus more on what's going on in the Black community a little bit more, because they talk about everything else, but leave out the major key things that we as Black people need to hear. And that's what I haven't gotten informed about a lot of things. Not informed about a lot of things. So I'd like to see change in that, because that would take us all a long way to just be a little bit more awake as people, because I feel like a lot of us are sleeping, and I feel like that's just from the environment we're in. I feel like we have to seek that information, and a lot of people don't have access to that, so they go to school. Mm-hmm. They're getting access to a lot of different information that they're not getting the chance to see. That they need to see what's really going on out there. And I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we haven't seen yet. But the minute we contact it, it'll hit us hard, and we won't be prepared for it. And they're not going to prepare us for that. So I feel like we gotta figure that out ourselves. But if they want us to keep going to school, they want me to stay in school and certain things about George Washington, this and that, who made the light bulb and all this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Teach me more about Dr. Martin Luther King. Teach me what he was about. Teach me what Malcolm X was about. Teach me what Nelson Mandela. Teach me all of them. Teach me everything I need to know. Instead, they hide that from me. They tell, but I understand that's on me though, because I got to go seek that information out myself. But I shouldn't have to.
But you shouldn't have to, right?
That should also be there for me.
Mm-hmm.
Seek it out for myself because no one's gonna hand it to me, and I know that. So I'm gonna find it out myself. But I also want it. But I know there's a lot of people not thinking that way. And when I go back to school, I want people. I want people. I want people to figure out that there's not a lot of resources out there for us. And I feel like they just need to give it to us. You know, just not a handout, but access. Give us a little bit more access. They're not giving it to us.
Yeah, access in your English classes so you can read some books that are on cultures other than white. Access in your history classes and learn about cultures other than white. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I appreciate that. Lauren, talk to us really quickly about what things you want your teachers to do maybe differently in the classroom when the fall semester starts.
For me, at my school, for my history class that I was in this year, civil rights movement is the last thing that we do talk about before our finals and stuff. So after talking about the civil rights movement, I do not see how we cannot tie in as well to everything that's going on in general right now. Like, I feel like that is the perfect intro to how we can introduce, even if we don't have to have a whole month where we talk about it, we can literally talk for a week and just inform things that this stuff happens in America. And if you want, these are links that you could go and read about. Here are some books that you can look on Amazon and get to inform yourself. Instead, we are just seeing, okay, there is Martin Luther King Jr. who had a dream, and they talk about that. But to be honest, all that I've learned from school is that he had a dream that we were all seeing equal. That's all they really say at school. And from Malcolm X, they say that he was all about business. Like, we are not going to just sit there and watch things play out. He gets things done. We are not really shown like more beyond the basic. Like, I feel like it's a rushed topic, which it shouldn't be.
Yeah, so you don't learn about the Harlem Renaissance, Black Panther movement, Emmett Till.
None of that.
Yeah.
Emmett Till I learned about from reading a book in my English class. So that I did learn about. But other than that, at my school, I just started a club. We have not made a name for it, but it's about hate at our school in general. Hate towards racism, hate towards the LGBTQ community, hate towards everything on campus. So we just started a group for that, and that is probably the best thing that my school has done. Because now with that, it is the main person that is the main teacher involved in that is a black teacher at our school. Mm-hmm. So she is the organizer of that. And she made it clear that we will be providing things, that we will also, like during Black History Month, during months that are for minorities and all that, we will be providing information where you can learn. So that is great to hear that my school that is predominantly white, like I said earlier, will have a chance to learn about more than what is provided.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Lauren. Bree, thoughts about, I'm curious, I want the audience to know how many classes you had in college that were taught by a person of color. I want you to answer that question because the assumption is when you leave high school and go into college, you'll learn about race, you'll learn about racism, you'll learn about all the isms, all the phobias, and you'll be taught by professors of color. How true has that been for you?
So for me, it was a little bit different because I came across my minor in African American, African diasporic studies my sophomore year. So I was able to sort of cultivate that. But even within that minor, I would say totally, I've had about 3 Black professors, 2 that were male, 1 that was female, you being one of them, Dot. So what was interesting to me was that even though I had access to this form of my curriculum, there was only so many Black teachers that I could pull from as resources on campus to further that conversation with. As I started to graduate, I met more Black members on campus that were part of like the student administration and stuff like that. But professors, no. Even in my business classes, there was one woman who was, there was one woman that taught me in my organizational behavior class that was Black, but halfway through the semester, she ended up leaving. And she was replaced by a white woman that taught her class and kind of came in and completely changed her curriculum and the things that she had organized around and what she wanted to teach. And in my experiences, I've come across a couple classes in school where that's happened, but not to the degree within which a teacher's curriculum was completely changed. Even if a teacher who stepped into another person's position because they were unable to teach that class still kept some of the core like themes and core materials that other professors had in their classes prior that taught that class that still made that class important. So it was interesting to kind of get that interaction, even cultivating the minor that I had, not to mention that those professors that I met were fantastic, like lifelong relationships, Doc being one of them for sure. But at the end of the day, it was still like a very limited experience and what my expectation would have been towards stepping into the college space.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Aaron, and then Isaac, I want you guys to talk about the digital divide. When we went online because of COVID, right? School districts and colleges made this crazy assumption that everybody was going to have access to a laptop, everybody was going to have access to internet, everybody was going to have access to digital libraries. And so, Aaron and then Isaac, how hard was it for you when you went home to stay on task, even if you had access to those things? Did you have to watch siblings? Did you have to, work around the house to help your parents? What were some of those responsibilities during this time away from school during COVID, Aaron? And then Isaac, you answered the same question.
So for me, I was directly impacted by the switch to online learning because I did not have access to Wi-Fi for 2 months. I got it back for 1 month, and I now no longer have access to Wi-Fi. I've had to take incompletes in my courses because I tell teachers that I can't access the internet, and yet, the work is still piled on. Grading continues. I had to fight with my mom and the administration for those incompletes because I had no access to internet. And not only that, but I have a at-risk person who lives in my house who I've been helping. My mom had surgery, so I'm helping her. So I am one person who has been directly affected by the digital age, and I don't believe that at my university that they've done enough to help me and help people like me who are in similar situations, who cannot access the internet, who have to take care of family members and whatnot. Not only that, but in the times that I was able to be in class and to speak to my classmates, like I have classes where there are 40 students and only like 10 of them are online at a time. And when we do have discussions about race and whatnot, people are silent. People don't want to talk. And so much of the conversation that could have happened in person were obsolete in the online field. And it was just very frustrating to try and engage with my classmates, knowing that they didn't want to engage with me because they're at home, they want to relax, they want to do what they're doing. They're also dealing with COVID and their own problems. So not only was it a struggle for me to even get online, but when I was online, I don't believe that I was getting the necessary education. I don't believe that what I'm paying for was worth it, because teachers were struggling to teach online and students weren't engaging with the classes themselves. So I think that the online classroom idea, it can be effective, but for me, for many other Black students who live in areas where it is hard to get Wi-Fi or we're taking care of our family and whatnot, online teaching is very difficult for us. And I do not believe that my university did a good job of helping Black students and other students of color when it came to getting them the necessary education.
And really quick before I jump to Isaac, if you cannot go back to school in the fall right away because of COVID and you have to remain online, Would you consider leaving the university? Would you consider going to another university? What are your thoughts and plans?
For me right now, my family and I are trying to switch our network provider, hoping that might help. But in the chance that doesn't help and we still struggle with having Wi-Fi, I would have to withdraw from university for the semester, probably have to take classes elsewhere at a community college just so that I can get the credits to come back or to go elsewhere. So for me, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of figuring. It's just like day by day seeing how the situation betters or worsens and going from there. And the fact that my university isn't providing me with the help is also is making the situation worse. So it's really just a matter of time and how my family and I can move forward and hope for the best.
So Aaron, really quickly, you've got almost 100 people on this call tonight. I need to ask you this question. Is it the service provider that is just not working, or the financial means to pay the service provider?
It's been both. It's been the fact that the service provider is not working, and then when it comes to financial means, they're constantly adding onto the fixes, right? They're like, oh, you need this fix, or we need to add this much more of a surcharge to this, and it constantly just piles up and piles up and piles up.
And
so
we're going to get this solved. We're going to get this solved tonight, Aaron. Do me a favor, Aaron. What's your Cash App? What's your Venmo? We're going to get this solved tonight. Do you have Cash App, Venmo?
I only have Venmo, and my Venmo is just my name, Aaron Lane, E-H-R-E-N.
I'm putting it in the chat. Spell it for me. E-H-R-E-N-L-A-Y-N-E. That's your Cash App?
That's my Venmo. I don't have Cash App.
That's Venmo? All right, everybody on the call, I'm putting Aaron Lane, Venmo. He's talking about service providers, internet. We got to take care of this. We will not allow one of ours not to be able to do homework, not be able to access information because of lack of resources. Aaron, I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability tonight. We will take care of you. It's Venmo. Y'all see it in the chat, E-H-R-E-N-L-A-Y-N-E.
Thank you. That really means a lot. I don't even know what to say.
This is the village. This is the village. You know, we take care of our own. And so
Doc is over.
I don't know how much will be in that account. Don't think about giving none of it back. If it's more than you need, then you put it to somebody else. We pay it forward. That's what we do as a family, a community. We pay it forward.
Thank you. Yeah, 100%. Thank you. Thank you. I really can only say thank you.
The chat box is going off. Everybody said they got you. So Aaron, before the call, man, make sure you let me know that there's some dings and some things going off in Venmo.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
There's a message here before we go to the next question. Dr. Will on the call says he wants to donate. He got to jump off the call. Aaron, he says, look him up on Venmo. His name is William. I'm going to put it in the chat. His name is William Eddie, PhD. I guess you can find people on Venmo. He said, look him up. He wants to drop some money in your account.
Thank you. I see it.
Okay. Got you taken care of, Aaron. Isaac, how has the digital divide affected you where you are? Have you been able to gain access to internet, complete your assignments on time? How did you end the semester?
Okay. I would say that, first of all, I'm thankful to God that my parents can't afford the financial means to have Wi-Fi and things of that nature for my education. I would say the biggest challenge for me when it came to this digital divide was definitely the social impact that I get from the classroom setting. I really don't like communicating over computers and laptops and things of that nature. So getting in contact with your teachers can be a hassle, and then even that social, lacking of social interaction with peers can have a devastating impact on your mental health. But I would say that was one of the biggest challenges. And then I also run track, so I lost my my outdoor senior season, which was I guess I would say pretty crucial to like the recruiting process when it comes to college, because I just graduated. So definitely going, trusting God to see how I can maneuver this without sports, without social interactions, without being able to have these conversations with my teachers and my fellow students. It was definitely a challenge, but I would say that I ended it pretty well. We made it. I graduated, and I will be attending Davidson College in the fall, hopefully, if they allow us to go to campus. But I would say that this has definitely been challenging for youth all over the place.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing. One of the things, and Cliff jumped back in the call. I appreciate that, Cliff. I know you had a few calls to take of your own. One of the things that Cliff and I have talked about is with the Young CEO Project, we want to be able to provide winners who are part of the cohort, all students, $10,000 to go towards their business idea. And so when we get this thing up and running, we'll make sure that we share it in the chat, in the emails, so that all of you students who are on the call and all the parents and educators who are on the call, we are providing opportunities for young students of color to enter in a pitching contest similar to Shark Tank. And that contest has rewards up to $10,000. And we plan on doing this several times in a year. And so, Cliff, if you want to talk about that piece a little bit, but Cliff, also talk about the piece you and I almost spend every night talking about, funding businesses.
Absolutely. Absolutely. First, I want to tell the young man in New York that everybody here is looking for your Venmo, son. So send your Venmo in the chat. I didn't see it. Or Cash App or whatever you have, set it up because they're ready to go. All right. But yeah, we're just looking to do our part, right? In the Black community, like I said before, we don't get these opportunities a lot. We got to go through a lot of hoops to open up businesses, to get SBA loans. We have all of those people on our side. We got all of those resources. So we're just trying to give it back. What me and Jason's been talking about a lot is creating a Black bank to a degree, right? Circulating the money. I'm funding a lot of these young men to put them into position. All of these young men here. We have a lot of young men here, about 6 or 7 of them boys here. And we're funding all of these boys to put them in a position to own and run their own stuff, so they can be in the room, right? I know Jason speaks a lot about, or me and Jason speak a lot about the writing and everything, and we're talking about, does writing work versus legislation? And to me, personally, I want to be in the room, right? On the local level, on the state level, on the country level, whatever it is, I got to be in the room because we got to put ourselves in position to change laws, right? Rioting works for today, but long term, we have to change some laws for us to get some justice. And we have to put some of our people in the room. So finances do that. And with more Black and brown businesses in the nation, if we fund 100 companies over the next 3 years, that means we have more Black and brown businesses that can now get into the room. And we can make a real change. It's not going to happen overnight. We understand that. We have to be patient, but nothing that's worth it does. But yeah, Young CEO Project, man, it's an amazing project. We're looking forward to getting this thing off the ground. August or September is when we're going to launch. Looking to fund, like I said, about 100 businesses over the next 3 years. And even if we don't fund, we're showing everyone how to start a business from scratch, create it, business plans, financial models, incorporation, all of that stuff, putting it from A to Z. We already done it we've already did it for a couple of young men, as well as I've done it for myself several times over, lost everything and got it right back. So we ready to go. And I appreciate Dr. Jason Otley. He's a man of the people, you know? He's a man of the people.
Shout out to Doc. Shout out Doc. Doc.
Yeah. Yo, he's a different dude. He's a different dude for sure. We appreciate him. Very impressed by what he's doing, and we riding with him all the way.
Facts.